Lola. She's my cat. And today we have a podcast episode for you. Stop eating my yarn. This week I have a pretty typical podcast episode for you. So I have a good number of finished objects, a few WIPs, and I have bought quite a bit of yarn, which I was doing really well throughout the month of January and the first half of February. And then some things came up. I had some time to kill at various points. I had things that I decided I needed. So I have a lot of acquisitions as well. Generally speaking, it's been my goal this year to keep my acquisitions to a minimum and to prioritize getting things out of my stash. Now, I've actually done an okay job of that this month still, but I'll talk about the totals and all the numbers towards the end, and just kind of let you know where I'm at in terms of using up versus bringing in yarn into my stash. Grab something to drink, grab your knitting, and let's go ahead and get started with my finished objects. So my first finished object is actually the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. This is my Ranunculus. I knit it in woolly knit British wool 4-ply in the color Pine Forest Green. I have some right here. And Lana Gross's Silk Hair in Petrol. And that I don't have with me, but it's a little bluer than this, and it's kind of why this has a more heathered blue color. I knit the first size. I think it has a slightly tighter gauge than the pattern called for, and I did end up tapering the sleeves. So I outlined the way that I tapered it in my Ravelry project page, but I basically knit a certain number of rows even, and then I think I did 8 rows in a decrease a couple times, and then 6 rows in a decrease a couple times. And I thought about doing twisted rib cuffs, but I ended up doing I-cord like the pattern says. So I did have a wonky number of sleeves or stitches for the sleeves like I did for the body, which I talked about in my last podcast episode when this was still a WIP. I think I had one more stitch on one sleeve than I was supposed to. I don't know what happened with my stitch counts on this, because I'm usually pretty good, and if not, I can kind of find the mistakes. But I think that with the yarn held together, so I have 2 strands of woolly knit and 1 strand of mohair, and I think that plus I don't really know what, because usually I can find my mistakes eventually. And when it came to the body, I didn't really try to, I tried to find that. I didn't try to find the sleeve mistakes at that point. I just ran with it. And it's honestly probably the best fitting sweaters I've ever made, and I really love it. I can see why people make this pattern again and again. I've been getting a lot of wear out of it. Kind of while I can. So it is pretty itchy, and I found I have a different sweater, the Be Thankful cardigan in woolly knit British wool Aran, and I did find that was a little bit itchy next to my skin, so I am wearing a long sleeve t-shirt underneath this. It's been pretty chilly in the Bay Area. We haven't gotten into the 50s recently. Some days it'll stay in the 40s Fahrenheit, of course. So, it's not that cold, but I'll wear a long sleeve shirt under the sweater with a vest or a lighter jacket, and that's pretty good for most of the day. And I figure because this is a little bit itchier, it's not super close to skin soft, I am trying to get my wear in with it while I can. I could imagine making a lighter version of this someday. But yeah, I think another Ranunculus is probably in my future. I talked a little bit more about this project in my last podcast episode, which I will link above. You can hear about it when I think it had no sleeves. I don't think I'd started the sleeves last episode. I think this is maybe one of the first sweaters I've made where I actually washed and blocked my swatch. that wasn't like a test knit. And so it's probably no surprise that it came out fitting really well. But there you go. My next finished objects are kind of a 2-for-1. So I made 2 flaxes. This is only one of them. The other one is already with its intended recipient. So this is the 1 to 2 year size. The other one I made, which I will put a picture up of, is the 6 to 12 month size. And I made these for my friends' babies. So I mentioned last week, I think I had maybe 1 sleeve left of the other flax. This is a pattern by Tin Can Knits, by the way. I think many people are pretty familiar with it. It's very popular. It's a free pattern. And I knit it in Bella Cash, held double. So that's a discontinued yarn, but this blue is Storm and the green is Pistachio. And I had originally earmarked this yarn for some onesies. That's why I bought a sport weight yarn, but I decided that I wasn't really finding myself enjoying knitting baby things at such a fine gauge. So, at least not a onesie. I think it just ended up being more work than I really wanted. So I frogged them, I only made one, or like 3/4 of one. I frogged the onesie and I knit it into 2 sweaters. One for my classmate, a woman in my cohort who had a baby recently, I think in December. So I sent her that one, and this is for my friend's son who has his first birthday coming up in a couple weeks. This has slightly cropped sleeves because I ran out of both yarns. I think I literally have 2 grams of the blue yarn left and none of the green. So it ended up using my yarn up really well. I think the stripes are pretty cute. I went with a different stripe pattern for this one than the other one. And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully it fits okay and the sleeves aren't too bad. I did try to block them out. I did forego the garter ridge panel on this one, as I have in I think all the other flaxes I've made as well. And I did skip the short rows and make the like wider, less structured neck. So I made the neckband before the raglan increases instead of picking up the neckband later. So this will be gifted soon and it'll be out of my house. My next finished object are these socks. I talked about these socks in my last video about finishing or frogging my my WIPS that had been hibernating. And these ones hadn't really been hibernating, but they were the subject of some consternation. So these are Basic Ribbed Socks by Kate Atherley. It's a free pattern. I've made it before. I really enjoy it. I knit these 2 pattern. These are the 2nd largest size. I think that might be medium or large, but whatever the 2nd largest one is. I think it was a 64 stitch sock. And these are for my boyfriend's mom. So the yarn is from Pearl's Yarn Emporium in Asheville, which is a super cute local yarn store I highly recommend. And the colorway is called Second Breakfast. It's from their Adventure Yarn collection. I talked about these in my last video. Like I said, I had asked her, my boyfriend's mother, to measure her foot for me, and she said her foot was 12 inches long. And as I made these socks, they just started to look huge. And I talked to my boyfriend, and like he was like, I don't think my feet are 12 inches, and they're not. And he is, you know, he wears a men's size 13, she wears a women's size 12. So it turns out her feet are closer to 11 inches. I ended up frogging like 1 or 2 inches of these of the first sock. Luckily I had not made the 2nd sock yet. And I think the yarn turned out fun. It pooled pretty well into these stripes. I wasn't certain if it would be self-striping, and it did get a little bit wonky on the tops of the foot. I did end up alternating from both ends of the skein for like the gusset part of the sock, but it went back to being pretty well striped in the foot after that. This one is green kind of on the top of the foot. So yeah, these will be sent off this week. I have some yarn to mail that I've sold. So these will go with them. Well, I'll be taking them to the post office at the same time. These did lighten up a lot in the wash. Like, I don't know how clear it is from the yarn ball versus the socks, but I washed them like 5 times and they were just still like bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And I'm mostly just happy that it didn't end up being like running, but the colors are still distinct. I think it's kind of fun, the lightened colors. So yeah, I'm happy with these, and I think that they will be appreciated in their new home. My last finished object still has not been blocked and the ends have not been woven in, but we're gonna call it. This is the My Time sweater by Lily Kate France, and I am thrilled with this. I flew through this knitting. This was made using Sheepius? I think it's Scopius. I think I looked it up. Terrazzo, which looks like this, and Valley Yarns Southampton, which is a silk mohair in slate blue. So this yarn I think is 70% wool and 30% viscose and 100% recycled, which is super cool. It's this nice tweedy yarn, and there are like 360 yards in 100 grams. So it comes in 50-gram balls. So that's 180 yards or something like that. Anyway, it's like a light DK. Not that dissimilar from, well, I have never felt it or seen it in person, but I used it in place of Rowan felted tweed, which was the one used by Lily Kate for the pattern. That's the suggested yarn. So there's a lot of ends dangling off of this, but I made the second size. I started with the body, but I knew that I was like, I wanted to try to make the non-cropped size, but I knew I had like 50 grams or yards less of yarn than the size called for. So I knit the body with 2 balls, which took me under the armhole. Basically, I just wanted to finish the arms and have enough like stability that picking up the armholes wouldn't be that hard. I made the neck after that, which is sitting kind of funny, but hopefully it'll block out. It has this like notched V-neck, and then you pick up the neckband, and it has these really dramatic sleeves with slip stitches. So the sleeves each took like about a 150-gram ball, I think a little bit more even. So I was worried that I wouldn't have enough yarn to finish it well, but I actually had just enough. So I ended up running out of the mohair like a quarter of the way into my last ribbing round, which didn't really bother me. Honestly, I think that's great because I have a good number of mohair scraps and I'm not totally certain what to do with them. So I just did the last like 3/4 of a round and the tubular bind off in the terrazzo alone. I have this much terrazzo left. It's 26 grams, I think. So this sweater's a little longer than the cropped version, but a little shorter than the full length version, which is honestly probably fine. I'm only 5'4". I don't know how tall Lily Kate is, but she looks taller than that. So I think it'll still be like a decent length for me. I've tried it on since finishing it, but I'm trying not to take too much stock in how it fits until it's done blocking. But I did wash and block a swatch for this one as well, so it should be great. I'm just excited to see these sleeves bloom. They look really big on me. I mean, they are really big. But they're fun. I think that this is really fun. It knits up really quickly because it's at a pretty loose gauge for me. Like, I don't knit many things above DK, but this and this are both like, well, technically the Ranunculus is a knit for fingering weight yarn, but it's knit at a super loose gauge. This is, Aran weight. It knits up at a really loose, or a relatively loose gauge. It's like 16.5 stitches per inch, or per 4 inches, I think is the gauge of the pattern, which is appropriate for the yarn. But like, I just don't knit that many things at such a loose gauge. So, I finished all of this in like the last 3 weeks. And I think now that I finished blocking the socks and a couple swatches, this should be on my blocking mats in the next couple of days. So I have 4 WIPs. I guess I'll start with this one. Oh God, this is not fun to look at. This is the beginning of a Chubby's Bear by Lorraine Pistorio. So this is a free pattern for like a bunch of little stuffed animals. So I've made the legs and the arms, and I'm working on the body. So I still have to sew up the holes, obviously, and stuff them, but I'm at the point where I think what I need to do next is like knit the legs onto the body. Like, I think the way that you do it is you like, as you're working, I've made like the bottom of the body here, and as you're working your way up, you like sew or knit 2 stitches together, like one from the body and one from the limb that you're attaching. I have never knit a stuffed animal before. I crocheted a very messed up hot dog for my friend's cat, Charlotte. I'll try to insert a picture if I can find one. The hot dog kind of started out a certain width and got skinnier. I'm not very good at crochet. It would be a lot easier in this case. I'm hoping to give this bear to my friend's son who's having his first birthday party in a couple weeks, which is what I have the flax, my second flax for, the one I showed you today. So, this is just like not very fun to knit. Like, I think I did all of these in like an hour or two. Like, it's not like these pieces took that long, but I am at the part where it's about to get hard, where I'm gonna have to start stuffing it and like really sewing the holes together. It's knit at a pretty like tight gauge because you obviously want it to be like stuffable. It's time for me to, like, I basically did this much and then I was like, I'm gonna pick it back up later. And so far I haven't done that, but I'm going to finish it this weekend because I have no other choice. It's not that bad. And so I'm using Big Twist, like value worsted yarn in this brown. It's an all acrylic yarn. I've had it for a while. As I've been like organizing my stash and I gave away some of my acrylic yarn, I do feel like certain things like this I held on to because I was like, well, it might not be bad for baby stuff. It's a pretty neutral color, good for like accents on things. Hopefully I'll be able to finish this soon. I'll take some photos and I'll show it to you when it's done. My next work in progress is also part of my acquisitions. So I went to Joann Fabrics for buttons. The kid who's having his first birthday has an older sister who's turning 3 soon. I'm making her a cardigan. I wanted to get some buttons for that. A lot of yarn going on here. Patton's Croy sock yarn is like my kryptonite. I feel like it's really easy for me to justify like, oh, I'll just buy a little. So I did. That's a sock. It's a sock yarn. This is technically Patton's Croy Socks FX. This is in Cascade colors. This is Patton's Croy Socks, a non-FX version. And this is in muslin. So I got these two. These are 50 gram balls. I think they retailed for like $8. So they're not like super cheap, but they're relatively affordable. I will have some leftovers, especially because I'm making these little shorty socks. And I'm using the basic ribbed socks pattern by Kate Atherley for this. You can see I've finished the ankle. I am working on a slip stitch heel flap. In the pattern, it's just a knit heel flap. But I decided I would do some slip stitches, and I'm using this as a way to learn helical knitting, or to practice it. I've never done helical knitting before. I had heard of it, and I have thought about using it, especially with some of my hand-dyed yarns. And so I finally decided, since I'd bought these 2 colors, it was time to bite the bullet and run with it. So I used a tutorial by Knitty Natty. I feel like every time someone said this, it didn't make sense. I will definitely link the video. I think it's just simpler when you watch someone do it, but you're basically chasing your yarn like around the sock as you knit. Like each yarn, you sort of stop 3 stitches before, you slip to the next one, and then you like do that again. It makes more sense when you're actually doing it. It's really not hard. Sometimes it does require just like a tiny bit more thinking, but I really like it. I added a pretty thick 1x1 rib cup at the top of this. These are 56 stitches, which is my preferred sock size, and I think this is a pretty good way to use this up. Now, I don't know if this is even fun. I was going to say as a fun aside, but I have bought Cascade colors, the colorway by Croy, before, and I used them in these Andrea Mowry socks. They might be called like the Sparks sock. I think like there's a bunch of like spark related names. I'll make sure to link the pattern. These are like too big for me. I think were my first pair of socks and maybe my first all over colorwork project. And the Croy sock yarn is kind of more of a sport weight. So it wasn't actually a very good gauge match for the white yarn that I used as my contrast. I don't recall exactly what it was, but I know it wasn't the Croy. And this is what the Cascade colors looks like now versus in this ball, which I just think is kind of interesting. I think I bought this older ball in like 2016 or something. I definitely bought it when I still lived in Boston, and I left Boston in summer of 2017. So it is a really old ball, but when I saw this in the store, I was like, oh, this is the same colorway that I used here, but it looks completely different. So I guess that's just what 4 years, maybe 7 or 8 years of yarn manufacturing, what a difference that can make. So my next work in progress is also made with an acquisition, and it is this Be Thankful cardigan by Lily Kate Makes. Right now it is really nothing. I'm close to finishing the bottom before the sleeves split. It has pretty wide sleeves, or maybe I have some more straight knitting to do. I don't quite recall, but I finished. There's like some increases along each of these like faux side seams, and I finished those. I made this pattern before. I only recently blocked it because I think I finished it around when I was leaving for Christmas, and blocking things in winter, as I've spoken about at length in other videos, is like pretty difficult for me. And blocking in general is difficult. It's easiest if I can do it outside, which I cannot really do in the winter. It took me a while to block it. I blocked it, and I've been wearing it like all the time. I don't think I've worn it in a video yet, but I'm sure that I will wear it soon. I have like not really been able to stop thinking about making another one for myself. I just really was thinking about wanting a black or like a dark cardigan. So I decided to pick up this Wool of the Andes. And this is the Wellies Heather colorway. I think the tweediness is really fun. I haven't really worked much with tweed yarn, and I have 2 tweed projects that I'm working on, or that I have worked on recently, which is kind of interesting. But this yarn is 110 yards for 50 grams in the skein. It is 80% Peruvian Highland wool and 20% Donegal tweed. I talked a little bit about the last version of this that I made, but I made it in woolly knit British wool Aran. I didn't have quite enough yarn for it, so I made it shorter so it's more cropped. I tapered the arms a little bit more, although they're still pretty big. They're kind of meant to be balloony. And I bought enough yarn this time. I think just enough to make the second size instead of the first. Technically, I have a 36 or 37 inch bust. I should probably be making the third size. I believe the second size is for 32 to 34 inch busts, and it's 43.5 inches circumference, so it's meant to have a little bit more ease. But because I'm around a 36 inch bust, a lot of times I'm kind of between the second and third sizes, and because I think I tend to less ease than some patterns have written in, I will often end up picking the second size, which is what I ended up doing. So I've been working on this for a couple days, and I am about to split things off. I'm actually kind of happy that I haven't, because it's easier to show like this, even if it's still not very interesting. Once I've split off each of the panels, it just gets really hard to show. So yeah, oh no, I just dropped a bunch of stitches off of this. The one thing I will look forward to when I've started to work the different panels of it is that it won't all be smushed on this needle. I guess from there, because I'm already talking about acquisitions, I've already talked about 2 of mine, I'll talk about the rest. I'm trying to think of the best order to do this in. I'll start with the other thing that I bought at Joann, even though technically I purchased it after my Knit Picks order and another order I made. I went to Joann before I received the other packages. So this is Lion Brand Kobu in Lichen. It is a DK weight yarn. It is 50% or 51% cotton and 49% rayon from bamboo. I have worked with this yarn a little bit to make Sew Summer shorts and a Sew Summer shirt by Jessie May. So far I've only made a quarter of the shorts, and they're somewhere deep in hibernation. So deep that I didn't even find them for my video last week. But my boyfriend's friend and her wife are having a baby, and I'd asked him kind of what colors she liked. He said that he thought his friend liked green, and this is just a really soft yarn. So I looked around a little, and I decided to pick up some of this to make my boyfriend's friend something for their baby. And I think I got a couple buttons as well that I think should be a good size for this. So I'll probably make some sort of maybe one of those side button sweaters, maybe a cardigan, maybe a Henley. I don't really know yet, but I got this to do something for that baby. Now, the same day that I went to Joann, I was out of the house for a while because my boyfriend and his friend were hanging out here. They were noodling around with some music stuff. I am not musical. Sorry, Lola's licking herself and it's kind of loud. I don't think you'll be able to hear it though. So I was just making myself scarce for a few hours. So I got some stuff for Lola at Petco. The Joann was right next to the Petco, and that was my main plan, but I had some cat errands. And then I still had some time, so I decided to go to my childhood neighborhood. For those of you who are local to the Bay Area, I grew up around Piedmont Avenue in Oakland. There's a yarn shop there now that was not there when I was growing up. But I have been thinking a lot since I made my video, my finisher frog video, about the sweater design that I had done in Knit Picks Kindred, which is a DK weight cotton and alpaca yarn. That yarn has been discontinued, so I've decided I need to just frog that and maybe retool the design in a different yarn. And I'd been thinking like, I don't want it to be like a super heavy piece. I mean, it has like eyelet detailing down the front, so it's not like a super wintry sweater. So I've been looking at like cotton wool blends and like blends of cotton and other things and bamboo, and basically I'm just like, I was interested in getting something that wasn't like a super full like rustic wool. One that caught my eye was the Queensland Collection United. So this is 55% lamb's wool and 45% cotton. This is the colorway Kingfisher. The number of that is 20. And I think I got like 5 or 6 of these. Now this is, I think they call it like a sport weight yarn, but it's 251 yards in 50 grams in this cake. So that feels like, and I mean, it looks pretty close to a fingering. I don't know if it like blooms a lot. I kind of tend to think no. I might end up holding this double. I'm not really certain yet. I thought about something like Sandnes Garn Duo, but that was more expensive. I might end up holding this double, but even still, I think that like the Duo would have been more expensive. Especially for shipping and stuff. Probably not if I lived somewhere where it was a more accessible choice for me, but I don't, like if I lived in Europe, or there's a couple stores that sell it, but the shipping and stuff would add up quite a lot. Plus the markup, I think, of like importing it to the US. So in any case, I got this yarn. I'm really excited to try it. It's like a super fun heathered, like tealy blue, which is totally my color. It's pretty similar to my Ranunculus, so I guess that's not surprising. Like I said, I made this Knit Picks order, and the purpose of the Knit Picks order was to get this Snuggle Puff. It is a 75% Pima cotton, 25% nylon yarn. I got it in the colorway Sneaklet. It is like a heavy worsted Aran weight yarn, but because of the blown, like the lightness of the texture of this, it is 142 yards in this 50 gram ball. So there's a lot to work with here. I got 4 of these, and this is for the 3rd birthday of my friend's daughter. I'm gonna make her a cardigan. I asked for like favorite colors and stuff, and she said that she really loves purple. So I didn't really have any like purple kid-friendly yarn for garments, at least. So I ended up buying this, and it's really soft. It's, you know, fuzzy. I don't know if I would call it a halo, but I think like it'll be fun for a kid's garment. I honestly wouldn't mind making something for myself in this someday. It doesn't really feel cottony. I've knit up a swatch. My plan is to make the Audrey's First Day cardigan. I forget the designer of that. And the reason I went to Joann was to buy buttons for her. I've made a few sweaters that had kind of fun buttons that my friend's daughter really liked, so I got her butterfly buttons for this one. Her birthday is in April, so I have a little bit more time than for her brother's birthday, but this will be knit up pretty soon. The rest of my Knit Picks order, I had 2 more things. I bought some Stroll by Knit Picks. So I mentioned before, this is Stroll Gradient in the colorway Merit Badge, and this is Stroll in Jackrabbit Heather. This Stroll Gradient, I guess I'll start with, is 458 yards for 100 grams. And I used a different color of Stroll Gradient for my Botanic Shawl by Stephen West. The colorway I used was Prickly Pear, and I used it with a white yarn, or like a natural color, Valley Yarn Charlemont. And I mentioned like maybe I want to buy the like remaining colorway of this because it's like being discontinued. It's like almost sold out. And I really, really like the shawl that I made, so maybe I should just like bite the bullet. And since I was already making this order, in addition to the Wool of the Andes tweed, I ended up adding in these two to make another botanic shawl, probably. So I have 2 balls of the Stroll Stroll and Jackrabbit Heather. There's 231 yards in 50-gram balls or skeins, and I have like another, I think maybe even a full skein of it that I had used part of or plan to use as an accent color for socks. So this one I might be able to use all of this because I used more of the main color than the contrast color in my last one, but we'll see. So this is not like a super urgent project, but I may cast this shawl on soon because I found it something really like calming to have on my needles. It was very like easy to memorize pattern that I really enjoyed. So this is destined to become a botanic shawl. My final acquisition from Knit Picks was Knit Picks Aloft. So this is a lace weight silk mohair, 72% super kid mohair, 28% silk. The colorway is Labyrinth, and there's 260 yards in 25 grams. I bought this to go with my remaining Woolly Knit British wool 4-ply in Pine Forest Green, and I am delighted at the color match. I think they look great together. And this is destined to become a shimmer vest. I think it said something like that. The vest is by Hapella Knits, and it's a bottom-up, like cropped vest with pretty big armholes and some like ribbing details around the cuffs and stuff. So I got 2 balls of this. I have like almost 500 yards of my woolly knit left, and because it's like not super next to skin friendly, I was thinking about like how I could best use it, and you know, with the quantity that I had, I was thinking about making like using it as a contrast color, but I didn't really want it to be a contrast color that would be like up by my neck. I thought about making a Kerr sweater by Rebecca of the Crayabea, but then I would have had to buy other yarn for the contrast or the main color, because this would have probably just been enough for the contrast for the shorter, the smaller band version. So I ended up deciding that maybe a slip over would be best, and in looking at vest patterns, like there weren't a lot of like even DK weight vests, and I tend to think like 2 strands of this doesn't even quite feel like full DK thickness to me, so I was like not really certain. But so these 2, I'll be holding this double with 1 strand of the Aloft for this slip over, and I'm pretty excited for that. They might be starting construction next door. My neighbor moved to upstairs, and they've been like intermittently, I don't know how long he'd lived there, but I think it had been a while, so they're updating the apartment, and they come at like the weirdest hours to do random construction, so hopefully I'll be able to wrap things up before it gets too loud. In any case, I bought these to go together, and I've been thinking of casting this on soon. I was gonna try not to make a gauge swatch, and I still think I might skip it because I have this, which is kind of like a giant gauge swatch, although I do need to get this to 19 stitches an inch or over 4 inches, which is, I think this ended up being like 15 or 16. So I have to think about what needle size I'll use. I'm not like super concerned about gauge. I'm mostly concerned in the sense that I want to be able to use my yarn. I don't want to run out. And I also just found out Brook Willow Knit, which is a channel I just started following, is hosting the Vest Friends Make Along, and that is spurring me to cast this on soon. So that starts, or it started. Today is February 28th, but I won't be posting this till Friday. So it will have started on the 1st of March, which is tomorrow to me, but a couple days ago to you. So go ahead and check out her channel. I will link her channel so that you can also join in if you're interested. Okay, now I have 2 more acquisitions. Like I said, I did go kind of crazy. So the first one is this Mirasol Weekla yarn. So I have another skein of this in the colorway Garnet, which is like a bright pink, which isn't exactly what I think of when I think of garnet, like a fuchsia. It's just really bright. I will link the video where I talked about that yarn, but essentially I have 1 skein of this pink yarn, 50% Pima cotton, 50% alpaca. There's 109 yards or 100 meters in 100 grams, which is what this hank is. So I have 1 pink hank of this, and I talked about it in my like deep stash yarns I want to get rid of video. And I'd been kind of trying to think of like what I wanted to do with it. So, and like coming up a little bit short, and I have been planning to make a cowl with it, but I was worried that I would run out of yarn before I finished a cowl. So, because it's not like a super, super bulky yarn, like, I mean, it's definitely bulky, but I could see this even pass for Erin. So I was worried that 1 skein wasn't going to be enough to actually make a cowl. So I got 1 other one because when I was looking for a link to that yarn for the video I made about what I wanted to destash or use this year, I found this link to a place called Yarn Loop. So I ordered 1 extra skein of this, and I think this colorway is called Calcite. It's color 2. I will say what it is in the comments or in the description below. But there's still a few skeins of this. It's really soft. If you want to go buy some from Yarn Loop, there's a few colors. I thought a lot about what colors to get. There's some really beautiful jewel tones, but I wanted to limit the amount that I was getting because it isn't super cheap, which is probably why I bought 1 skein in the first place. I don't think it's on sale at Yarn Loop, but yeah, so I'm gonna make some sort of like color work cowl with this, and the pink yarn, which I think I put away when I redid my yarn somewhat recently, so I'm not certain exactly where it is, but I'll probably cast this on soon because I think it'll be a nice palette cleanser. And yeah, so when I was ordering from Yarn Loop, I ordered 1 more thing. This is it. This is this is Woolstock worsted. That's not right. Well, I meant to order Woolstock light, which apparently I did not. Interesting. So, this is Woolstock by Blue Sky Fibers. This is the colorway Wild Time. It is 100% fine Highland wool, and it's like this nice heathered green. Let me like look at what I ordered. I'm going to use this or a light version or something. I have to think about this now that I've noticed. To make my boyfriend a hat. Oh, okay. It is supposed to be Woolstock light. I guess I have to email them. I want to make my boyfriend another hat. I've made him 1 hat. It's like it's a muscle burrow, so it's double thick, and I made it with like kind of a light DK yarn. So I was hoping I could make another one in fingering weight. Then it wouldn't be as thick, and it would be easier for him to wear. Because he complains he can't hear it in the other one. And it's not like we live somewhere where you need like a super duper warm hat all the time. And I was like, navy is kind of his color. He likes navy, so I asked if he wanted another navy hat, but he said no. He would take a dark green one. But I think he had a different, like, he wanted a particular dark green that we like were struggling to find. I think he wanted it to be like really dark, but not super blue. So it was just like kind of a difficult color. Like I would say this Pine Forest green is pretty dark, for example, but I think it was bluer than what he was looking for. But he also didn't want it to be too yellow. So I think he wanted like a dark kind of like true green. which I was having trouble finding, but he did ultimately look at this yarn or this colorway and say like, okay, I do like that. So, sorry, I'm just distracted by the fact that apparently this is not the right yarn. I really liked Yarn Loop. They mailed the yarn fast, but I will have to email them and hopefully their customer service is responsive. In any case, I'm gonna make my boyfriend a hat, probably a muscle burrow. I might do a ribbed one. Like I was talking to him about what like ribbing is and how a ribbed hat looks and what stockinette looks like. And I might try to do something kind of like Nitty Natty did and make like a ribbed muscle burrow hat for him. Because he doesn't want a brim. He wants it to just be like a straight hat. And I feel like that's easiest to achieve if you're folding it in. But we'll have to see exactly what ends up happening with that. So that is my last acquisition. I will quickly run through some of my totals for the month in terms of yarn usage versus acquisitions. Obviously I bought quite a bit of yarn, although I guess given that this is woolstock worsted and not woolstock, I'm just going to take that one out of my list actually. We've removed that one until further notice. So despite buying so much yarn, I have ended up minus 240 grams this month. Probably the biggest culprit of that was the 10 balls of Knit Picks Upcycle Reserve 100% wool bulky that I sold. And those were 54 yards each. And it totaled up to 1,000 grams. So that was great. Added 1,500 grams to my stash this month. 5,048 yards. I used either to make gifts or to make things for myself 740 grams or 4,337 yards. Used the adventure yarn, the Southampton in my Ranunculus, as well as the woolly knit in my Ranunculus. The Balacash in 2 colors I used up completely into baby sweaters. I made, those Southampton and the terrazzo that I used went into this. My My Time sweater and the Lana Gross's silk hair went into this. So yeah, those things ended up being used, and like I said, I got rid of 1,000 yards or 1,000 grams. I've just sold on Reddit my this Rowan silky lace. It is in the colorway Morganite, I think. This is 50 grams, 394 yards, and it is silk and cotton. And I think I bought this to like hold double or to hold with something else, but ultimately I just don't think that this is a super flattering color for me. So I'm gonna get rid of this. I didn't count this to this month. I have 4 balls of it in this bag over here, and I am about to invoice someone to sell it. So I've actually found destashing on Reddit. I like tried to sell on some Facebook groups, but I really wasn't getting any traction. I feel like a lot of the movement on these Facebook groups seems to be like really huge lots of like a worsted weight acrylic yarn, like a bunch of like Red Heart Super Saver and stuff, which like is fine, but obviously like I don't have that much acrylic yarn. I've kind of pared down my acrylic yarn mostly by giving it away, and I only have a few balls left of things that I think I can like imagine myself using for something in the future, for like a kid or a pet. So yeah, even though it was a big month of buying, selling that Knit Picks Upcycle Reserve bulky did wonders for keeping my numbers down and for keeping the space of the yarn that I'm using down. I'm hoping that it'll be a couple months before I have a spree like this month, but I'm at peace with my choices. I think it'll keep me busy for a while. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed sitting down with me for a little bit and seeing what I've been up to. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking it, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I release videos probably about 3 Fridays a month, I guess, so not quite every Friday. I am nearing the end of my PhD. It's coming up really soon, so I have had a little bit more of a busy time recently in my work life. So videos might slow down a slight bit, although I do have a lot of ideas. So we'll see. Again, thanks for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.